Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasts.
It's early in the morning and the air is crisp. The sky is still holding on to the darkness of night, and you blink yourself awake. You roll out of bed, lace up your shoes, press play on your favorite playlist, and allow the music to fill your ears as you step into the quiet. It is the exact same thing that you have done countless times. But as your feet hit the pavement, a thought creeps in. What if I don't make it home? If you have ever tightened your grip on your keys, scanned your surroundings not once, but multiple times, turned to look over your shoulder, ran faster, shared your location, or desperately searched for someone else to be nearby, you are not alone. For too many women, the simple act of running, of reclaiming peace, strength, and freedom has ended in tragedy. These are women who have trained hard, loved hard. They are more than just a victim. Their vanished footsteps echo a reality that is rarely spoken, yet always on our mind. Fear is a companion many women carry on every run. Welcome to Girl Gone Running, a Tragedy with a View series where I will tell you about the stories of the women who went out for a run and never came home. It is not about her death. It is about her life, the voice she no longer has, and the warning signs we can't afford to ignore. Because what happens on these days was not random. And as we dig deeper, we find that it changes everything. Welcome back to Tragedy with a View. Hello, welcome back. I am your host, Kayla, and we are starting off with a doozy this season. Last season, you might have noticed a very common theme where there were just not a whole lot of solved cases and there wasn't a whole lot of information on those cases. And as I explained in the last season, a lot of that is because there are details that investigators need to hold close so that way when they find the culprit, they can actually confirm that, you know, those details are something that only the killer would know. In this season, we have a lot more solved cases. We have cases where the information is just kind of crazy. And this is one of those cases where there's questions that linger. And I'm going to let you decide what you think based on the information that I give you. So we're going to get right into this one. In 1985, Suzanne Collins was a vibrant and ambitious young woman. She was born on June 8th of 1966, and she, along with her brother Stephen, are adopted by Jack and Trudy Collins. John A. Collins, their adoptive father, was an attorney and a U.S. diplomat, and because of this, they moved frequently. And they kind of have a crazy adoption story along with you know, everything else that's going on here. With John's work, he was kind of moved all over the world at times, and when they decided that they wanted to adopt, they started to look, they actually started with Catholic agencies of Northern Virginia. But because John was Catholic and Trudy was Episcopalian, they claimed that this was a quote-unquote mixed marriage, and it was not suitable for bringing a child into, which is wild to me. Like, the friends and family that I have really close by, they heard me venting when we were trying to adopt a dog. And my frustrations were that there were a lot of rescues that just didn't respond to applications or respond to emails with questions. And part of me is like, okay, they're probably very busy. And so if they don't think it's a good match, they're just not responding. That's kind of disrespectful in my mind. But at the same time, from my perspective, as someone who's trying to adopt a dog, you see all of these places that are constantly asking for food and blankets and puppy pads and donations to care for the dogs that are in their care because they're overloaded or they're completely full. They can't bring in any more unless some other dogs are either fostered or adopted out. And like, I see a lot of people asking for help. And the frustration is because I know that we are a good family and we are good dog owners and we take care of our pets very well. And, you know, they don't know that, but I know that. And so to me, it's like, why would they not give us a chance? And if they're not giving us a chance, they're probably not giving other people a chance either. And if you're so desperate for help, why are you not taking the chances when they are offered up to you? And so it's crazy to me that somebody would be like, yeah, we have children that are available for adopting, but we're not going to adopt them to you because your religion is different. Wild times. Anyways, it was while they were in Beirut that they adopted Stephen in 1963. And then in 1967, when Suzanne was about a year old, they brought her into their home as well. And it was like, as they were traveling, they just kind of heard of Suzanne, and Trudy was like, it was almost like an inkling of just a deep knowing that she needed to act on this little girl. And so they did, and they ended up adopting her. And then again, moved all over the place. They lived in Madison, Wisconsin, Springfield, Virginia, and they even spent some time in Greece in 1972 when Suzanne was about 6 years old. They would kind of settle for a little bit while here in Springfield, Virginia, where Suzanne would attend and then graduate from the E. Robert Lee High School. And I actually looked up the high school, and there has been some name changes along the way. So at one point, I think in 2020, it was changed to the name Legacy High School because there was some questions about, you know, the Confederate sounding name. And the Board of Trustees decided to reinstate the original name this past year in 2025. Anyways, in high school, Suzanne was a kind and talented student. She gets good grades, she's athletic, and right out of high school, she makes her own path by joining the Marine Corps in 1984. She handles basic training really well, and her drill sergeant apparently didn't like her at all, so he would just be really hard on her, along with a couple of the other girls that were in basic training with her. This sergeant actually almost reminds me of in high school, we had a football coach who was our history teacher. And I remember him venting the one day that because they didn't have a ban on girls joining the football team, if they had any girls come to try out, they would make the first few practices so long and so hard that the girls would just quit. But Suzanne did not quit. She made it through, and next she would be stationed in Memphis as a private first class to the Naval Aid Station. Here she would be living and training alongside many others, both Navy and Marines. The base is actually in the small town of Millington, Tennessee, just about 10 miles outside of Memphis. The base is roughly 4,000 acres of land and buildings and training centers and fields, and it is while she is here that she begins to lean into her interest in aerial combat. There is just one problem. There is a ban on women in aerial combat, but she is hoping that by the time she is ready to go to the Naval Academy, the ban will be lifted. Suzanne dreams of becoming the first woman to become a fighter pilot, and in the process of obtaining that goal, she enlists in the Marines Avionics training program. The Avionics program focuses on the electronic equipment that is inside the aircraft and how to use the equipment both in the air and on the ground. She makes new friends, such as Suzanne Hans. For the sake of not making things confusing here, we are going to call her Sue. So Suzanne and Sue are very similar. They are nearly identical in height. They drive the same car. They are both athletic. They are both blonde. They have the same build, so they were often sharing clothes. And that is not the only relationship that blossoms while she is here. Suzanne also meets Greg Gonzowski while she's here in Millington, and they quickly become a couple. During this course, Suzanne is promoted to the rank of Lance Corporal, and she also is the first female Marine at the air station to be named to the honor deck, which is a huge accomplishment. She is among the top of her class, and she is excited to be moving towards her goal. 9 months later, Suzanne is scheduled to graduate from the avionics program on July 12, 1985. And from here, she will be transferring to Cherry Point, North Carolina. She is 19 years old. She is thriving in life, though she hopes that instead of going to North Carolina, she can get transferred to California instead, because that's where both Sue and Greg are going to be stationed. It is July 11th, the day before her graduation ceremony, and as you might believe, it is a steamy and hot summer day. She has plans to get dinner with friends to celebrate her graduation, but when she gets called for NCO duty instead, she has to cancel. NCO duty is a normal part of base training where you have to go and check buildings and keep tabs on the people who are coming onto the base as well as leaving the base. During the evening, rain moves through the area and it finally cools down somewhat. And Suzanne is happy about this. As she is finishing up her work, she decides to take advantage and go for a run. Suzanne runs several miles every single day. She is fit, she is fast, she enjoys pushing herself and using this time to let off some steam. Though this run was different. She changed into a pair of red shorts, a red shirt, white socks, her running shoes, a white bandana in her hair, and a blue sweatband around her waist. She leaves at around 10 to 10:30 and tells her roommate that she was only going to go for a half hour and she isn't leaving the base. And then as she stands outside and stretches for a few minutes before her run, a friend comes by and she mentions to them as well that she's just going out for a half hour and then she will be back, and she is just really excited for everything she has going on in her life. And she is not the only one going for a run on base, as you can imagine. Private First Class Michael Howard and Private First Class Mark Shortwell are running as well. And as they go, at about 11 p.m., they pass what they describe as a tall, pretty blonde. She is going the opposite direction as they are, and a moment after she passes them, they notice a car is kind of creeping along, going the same direction as the girl, as Suzanne. They actually have to jump out of the way of the car because it is swerving back and forth on the road, and the car has their brights on and the muffler is loud. And so not only does the annoyance of this vehicle stand out to them, but just the way it is slowly moving and swerving does as well. As they pass by, they take a good look at the vehicle and notice it is a Ford station wagon. It is dark in color with wood paneling on the sides. And after the car passes, the two men look at each other and kind of scoff when a scream erupts through the night. They turn around and start running towards this scream. They can hear a woman who they assume is the woman that they just passed yelling to leave her alone, not to touch her, but they are again facing the headlights where the brights are on. So at some point, this car then turns around in the other direction. They can't see much ahead of them, and by the time they get near the car, which has now been parked on the wrong side of the road, it peels its tires and speeds away. And that woman that they just passed is not there. Now, they didn't see her be abducted, but they assume the worst. Private Shortwell and Private Howard now sprint to the Barack gates and notify the guard, David Davenport, who is on duty, about what they witnessed. And David mentions that he recognized the car that they were describing from earlier that day. David also notes that the car had Kentucky plates, and there was a man in the driver's seat with a woman in the passenger seat that he had his arm around. An alert of the possibility of an abduction, along with the car description, goes out on base, as well to local law enforcement, which includes both the Millington Police Department and the Shelby County Sheriff's Office. Private Shortwell and Private Howard will go looking on base themselves for the car, and when they have no luck, they finally return to their barracks at about 12:10 a.m. Around this time, the chief of watch for the base sees a car that matches the description provided, and he pulls it over. The car is a dark green 1970s station wagon with wood paneling on the sides. In the driver's seat is Sedley Alley, and in the passenger seat is no one. The chief of watch is immediately suspicious and asks Sedley to come in for some questioning, to which Sedley agrees. They check on Sedley's information and find that he is living on base with his wife, Lynn. She is in the Navy and she works on base. They give her a call and she agrees to come in too. The guard on duty takes one look at them and says, yeah, this is the couple that I saw earlier in the evening. They are also able to verify that the muffler on this car is louder than normal. When inevitably the question about screaming is asked, they admit that it was them. Sedley and Lynn had gotten into a fight, which is why Sedley was swerving down the road and Lynn got out of the car. She was screaming at Sedley, who convinced her to get back in the car before he stomped his foot on the gas and took off. They both make the same statement separately without having been with each other, and because their stories line up, they are released to go home. But let's dig in a little bit on Sedley's past, shall we? Sedley was born on August 16th, 1955. He had previously served in the military, but he was discharged after his continued abuse of drugs and alcohol. He worked for an air conditioning company, and while none of this was very alarming, there was one thing they found that indicated that maybe they should look a little bit closer. At the time, he is 29 years old. He is 6 foot 4 inches tall and 220 pounds. So he's a big guy. And he is also on his second marriage, not because of divorce, but because his first wife, Deborah, died under suspicious circumstances. She was 20 years old and she lost her life 3 days after filing for divorce. She was found in her bathtub. According to Sedley, she had gone out for a night of drinking with some guys, came home, and drowned. According to the results of the autopsy, Deborah had strangulation bruising around her neck and she had a French fry stuck down her throat. The medical examiner concluded that Deborah died from asphyxiation on her own vomit rather than drowning, which should have been red flags. Yet, Sedley wasn't even questioned on this. Coming back to when Private Shorewall and Private Howard learned that Sedley was released, they are insistent that the screamings they heard was not that of a normal domestic dispute. It didn't sound like a woman who was angry with her husband. It sounded like a woman who was scared for her life. They stand by their statements, but with no one being reported missing, they don't have anything to work with. Without this missing person report, there doesn't seem to have been a crime committed. But at 5 a.m., it finally comes. Suzanne's roommate woke up to find that Suzanne wasn't home and that her bed hadn't been slept in. Her running shoes aren't where she normally leaves them, meaning that she never came back from her run. And now they are connecting this beautiful, tall blonde that Private Shorewall and Private Howard are scared was abducted with the tall and stunning Suzanne Collins, who didn't come home. As police fan out and try to think of any place that someone might go to dump a body, their fears are confirmed when they find one. 150 feet off the side of the road in the public Edmund Orgill Park, 8 miles away, they find a female body. She is naked and is, quote, mostly face down. They are pretty quickly able to determine that she had been dead for about 6 to 8 hours, meaning that the time of death would be between 10 p.m. and midnight, exactly the same time that Suzanne disappeared. Her red shorts and shirt have been torn and scattered around her body. Her face is badly beaten. One of her eyes has swollen shut, and she has claw marks from her shoulders down to her waist. She has bruising on her shoulder blades and around her neck, just like Deborah, and bite marks on her breast. The injuries are so bad that a photo can't be used to identify who she is, but they connect the dots pretty quickly back to Suzanne. At the scene, they also find a pair of red men's underwear, a screwdriver, and oddly, a tree branch that had been sharpened into a weapon. So this tree branch had extra twigs and leaves that were pulled off of the main stem. And then it was sharpened into a tip like a spear. It was over 31 inches long and 1.5 inches in diameter. Also here, they find paper napkins from a local chain restaurant, beer bottles, styrofoam cups, tire tracks, and shoe prints. As soon as the chief on watch back on base learns that Suzanne's body has been located, they go arrest Sedley. They impound his station wagon, and when they start searching it, they find napkins. The same napkins that were found at the scene where Suzanne's body was dumped. Police began to interrogate Sedley. After several hours, he asks for a lawyer, and this ends the questioning. But only for a short time, because then he changes his mind and says he does want to talk. And when he starts talking, he agrees to be recorded. As the tapes start rolling, Sedley said that he was lonely last night. Lynn had gone with some friends who were hosting a Tupperware party, and he missed her. He missed his kids who were living in Kentucky, and so he started to drink to drown out his sorrows. First, he drank a bottle of wine, and then 2 6-packs of beer that they had at home. Then he wanted more, so he decided to get behind the wheel and head to the liquor store. Police are quick to intervene here and mention that where his car was seen is not on the route to the liquor store, and Sedley doesn't have an explanation for this. If this is the truth he is telling, I'm not sure that he would even know where he is going because he's consumed so much alcohol at this point. But he continues stating that he parked his car, he got out of it near the base golf course to walk around, and it is here that he saw Suzanne. He claims that she stopped to talk to him when she saw him. They had a brief conversation before they ran back to his car together. And if you find the story as unbelievable as I do, you are not alone, since the police also don't believe a word that is coming out of his mouth. None of what he says is making sense. Suzanne had told friends that she wouldn't be leaving base, yet he claims that he saw her off base. After 12 beers and a bottle of wine, I'm not sure you're going to be running anywhere, but that isn't the part that stands out to police. The part that catches their attention is that he just admitted to being alone, which blows his and Lynn's alibi out of the water. Sedley claims that when he got back in his car, he watched Suzanne run away, and then he started to drive again. This time, though, when he got back on base, he was making his way down one of the narrow roads, and we already know that he was kind of swerving around when he saw Suzanne, and then accidentally hit her. He claims that he got out of his car and he found her screaming and rolling around on the ground in pain. So he went to help her up into his car so that way he could get her some medical attention when she started screaming at him. She was saying things to him like, "You're drunk, you're a drunken bastard," and that she was going to get him in trouble. Sedley then forced her into his car, took her to the park, pushed her back out of the car, and held her down while he beat her with the screwdriver. Apparently, both ends of the screwdriver, and I will just leave it at that. However, the autopsy does not show any injuries consistent with being stabbed with a screwdriver or being hit by a car. Her skull was fractured, though, which shows just how hard or how violently she was beaten. He then tries to stage the scene to look like she had been sexually assaulted and said that he did not do anything like that to her. It is the way that he describes staging the scene. It is the way that he describes staging not only the scene, but also the injuries to her body to indicate a sex-related crime that makes everyone in the room uncomfortable. After this, they take him to the scene and he is able to correctly identify several things, including the tree branch which he used to assault Suzanne. So they have him confessing to the murder of Suzanne. They have him identifying information that hadn't been released to the public or told to him. They have all of this happening over a very short window of time. And it seems pretty cut and dry, right? The autopsy would reveal the full truth of horrors that Suzanne carried before taking her final breath. Though she was strangled, this is not what caused her to die. She was struck over 100 times in the head, her skull was fractured, and this by itself was enough to kill her. But even worse, and this next part is worthy of a warning. And I'm serious, listener discretion is advised, and it is really, really bad. I don't usually get queasy with stuff like this, but this one is really hard to fathom. So maybe if you aren't ready for it, skip ahead like 20 seconds. Okay? Okay. Suzanne had been sexually assaulted so aggressively with a weapon, specifically the tree branch that had been sharpened into a spear. The simplest and least descriptive way that I can give you these details is to say that she was penetrated with this 31-inch long branch to the point where only 8 inches protruded from between her legs. The damage done was so catastrophic, with the branch being pushed so hard that it went through her abdomen and entered the right side of her chest cavity. Now, through both of these, Suzanne was alive. It is hard to tell if the blunt force trauma or the internal damage and bleeding is what truly ended her life, but what we know is that she was killed at the hands of Sedley Alley. Or was she? There are some parts that raise some doubts, such as the blood found on and in Sedley's car did match Suzanne's blood type, but they also matched to Sedley. Both of them had type O blood. There's also the question of why would he take the blame and go into detail about what he did when those details are not consistent with what actually happened. Like, for example, he didn't hit her with his car and he didn't stab her in the head with a screwdriver. He would be charged with first-degree murder, and his court-appointed attorney argued that Sedley suffered from a split personality disorder. Now, split personalities can be really complex to work with, especially if it is unmanaged or unmedicated. According to Sedley, through most of this trial, he doesn't remember anything happening at all. Sedley would be taken to a mental health hospital where he would be evaluated by multiple doctors over the course of several days. And in the end, they find that he does, in fact, have multiple personalities. 2, in fact, who are named Bill and Power of Death. Though it is impossible to say who had control of the mind at the time of Suzanne's murder, all of this could be intensified due to the large amount of alcohol he admitted to consuming. But in the end, he would be found guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated kidnapping, and aggravated rape on March 18, 1987. Sedley was given the death penalty with an execution date of September 11, 1987, so that same year. We never truly hear his wife, Lynn, accept or deny that Sedley had done this, though she does stand at his side during the trial before ending contact with him a year later. A lot of people have strong feelings about the death sentence. They are either for it or against it, and I don't know many people who are kind of in the gray area on it. The death penalty has always been and continues to be the punishment that is reserved for the worst crimes imaginable. It is definitive punishment, meaning once it's acted on, there is no going back. And that is part of the reason why today we see so many cases, even in the states that allow for the death penalty, giving plenty of space for those who are on death row, giving them every option in order to prove their innocence. Because, as we know, not everyone who is found guilty in the court of law is the true culprit. And of course, because of this, many execution dates get delayed again and again and again. One of the big factors of this case comes down to the fact that no one tested the blood in Sedley's car. They only know that it was type O, and in 2001, when DNA interpretations became a bit more fluent, the Innocence Project steps in and starts working to get answers. It is at this point that it is realized that there is no physical evidence connecting Sedley to Suzanne's murder. They point out the inconsistencies in Sedley's confession and what actually happened, stating that the only information that matched the two stories was the information that was public knowledge. As a reminder, the Innocence Project is not deciding that Sedley is innocent. They are simply investigating and giving the chance to find those who are wrongly convicted. Barry Scheck, co-founder of the Innocence Project, is also pushing for the underwear to be DNA tested, but according to the state, Sedley was incriminated on other evidence, and the DNA would not be enough to overturn his conviction. So they deny the opportunity to have it tested at all. The Innocence Project is able to find 11 sources of DNA from the sexual assault, the blood, the weapon, and so on. And on May 14th, 2004, less than a month before his next scheduled execution date, they file a petition for the testing of this DNA, but the court again rejects it. In 2006, the Tennessee Parole Board again recommends that the Tennessee Governor Phil Bredesen order DNA testing on the samples collected, and again, it is denied. Then another petition is filed with more specific DNA testing being requested, like that of the DNA found in the men's underwear and the skin cells found under Suzanne's fingernails, and again, denied. Fight after fight after fight. At 1:46 a.m. on June 28, 2006, Sedley is brought in to the execution chamber. He says goodbye to his son and daughter, who are both adults by this point, and at 2:12 a.m., Sedley is pronounced dead by lethal injection. It is after Sedley is dead that Lyd comes forward and tells what she knows to be true, that Sedley admitted to killing his first wife, that he strangled her and held her head under the water in the bath until she died. He paid attention to the details, like how when a person takes their pants off and socks off at the same time, and the socks kind of ball up in the bottom of the pant leg, and he staged the body much like he staged Suzanne's. Yet, the case continues, and Suzanne's parents have stated that they will never have closure, especially with the next twist that comes blazing through this case. In November of 2018, a man by the name of Thomas Bruce entered a religious supply shop, or a place where someone can go to buy religious materials and objects. He poses as a customer and then left before returning with a gun. The 3 women working at this time were forced into the back room, where he viciously sexually assaulted 2 of them and then killed the 3rd. After a 2-day manhunt ended in the arrest of Thomas, they found that the 53-year-old had some connections to other crimes. Most notably, that it was discovered that Thomas had been in Suzanne's aviation course, but he was stationed in California, not Tennessee. The details are unclear where he physically was at the time of Suzanne's murder, but this man had a record of breaking and entering and raping multiple women. He had been charged with 17 crimes, though he did not have an official record, but the state still refused to test DNA because the man who could be freed is already dead. It is while all of these details of Suzanne's murder are unfolding that the ceremony for the graduation takes place. There is a somberness surrounding her empty chair, and the flags blowing in the breeze are half-staff. The celebration is stifled, for one of their own was violently ripped from this earth. It is hard to wrap your head around the clear path to an answer that would leave many at peace and others with closure. Suzanne was brilliant and beautiful and ambitious light on this earth. While the state believes that they know who took that not only from her, but from the world, there are questions that linger, questions that we want answer to. And I will be honest, my opinion on this case is very conflicted. I am open to being wrong, but the state was presented with an opportunity not to say that they might have gotten the wrong guy, but to conclusively hold up that they did the right work from the beginning, and yet they refuse over and over and over and over again. The injustices in this case were most severely served to Suzanne. And as much as I hate to say it, we as citizens have already been shown how little faith we can have in the justice system. So that's it. That's the story of Suzanne Collins, the first episode of Girl Gone Running, Season 2. I want to know your thoughts. What do you think? Do you think Sedley was the right guy? Do we think we should be looking at Thomas a little bit harder? Let me know what you think. And thank you for listening. We will talk again next week. Bye. What is life without close calls with disaster? Thank you for listening. Don't forget to follow the podcast to be the first to hear the now weekly episodes. Join our subscription on Patreon, Apple, or Spotify today and immerse yourself in the haunting beauty of the great outdoors. For around $4 a month, you'll get exclusive access to the first episode of each month and early access to all other episodes, showcasing the morbid and mysterious side of nature. Please reach out with story requests, and if you have your own story, please email tragedywithaview@gmail.com for a chance to have your story featured on a later episode. Again, Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.